Good morning, I'm Beth Berry. I'm Vice President of Business Development for Real Green Systems. We're based in Walled Lake, Michigan. Today, I have as my guest Fred Haskett. Fred is one of the original harvesters. Fred serves the green industry from a consulting and peer group facilitation standpoint. He's had incredibly important roles with companies that I admire. So I will have Fred give you a quick background on Fred in case you missed the prior engagement. We really appreciated sharing your insights on the 12 steps to training managers. And along with that this week, Fred, I shared the new OSHA.gov document on how managers should be facilitating a safe COVID workplace in terms of how to manage those workstations. So I paired it with your 12 steps, and it was very, very effective. So welcome. Thank you for joining us and taking time today. Fred, give us a little background in case the folks don't know what you do.
Oh, thank you, Beth. Thank you, Beth. And it's a pleasure to be here today. I like being able to spend time with you guys at Real Green and yourself in particular, so we can talk about some of the sports rivalries that we have. But I've been involved in the industry for about 45 years now. I've kind of been around since dirt. Worked, came out of Ohio State with a degree in horticulture, focused on landscape primarily. Was involved in my first business in the lawn care business in my hometown, Dover, Ohio. Ran that for about a decade. Then I've worked for a couple of national and regional companies in senior leadership roles over the years. I've been with the Brickman Group, U.S. Lawns, and J.C. Ehrlich, regional company on the East Coast, running their lawn and tree division. And then most recently, I was with Landscape Development, a landscape construction company, about a 45 million operation as vice president. With that, as we help them navigate the post recession times and move from a pure construction business into a multifaceted business that works in the maintenance arena as well. And then about 5 years ago, Bill Arman and Ed LaFlamme, who I'd known for many, many years, talked to me, and I joined the Harvest Group. And together we have developed a whole series of offerings through the Harvest Academy. We've recently rolled out an account manager training series that we worked for about 3 years on. It's out there. It's an app-driven program, so that's been very successful so far. I work with about 35 companies. I manage a series of peer groups and facilitate those both on the landscape side and the lawn care side of the business. Those are about 6 to 8 member companies that come together to share their experiences and their information and brainstorm about how to deal with what's going on today. And those meetings have been very active here lately. So I like to say I did a 42-year internship so I could become a consultant out
That's
there.
So where is Dover, Ohio? I'm embarrassed to say I don't know.
It is, do you know where Canton is, where the Football Hall of Fame is at?
Oh, yes, yes.
Okay, about 25 miles south of there, if you go down Interstate 77 and you get off, and if you turn left, you go into Dover, Ohio. If you turn right, you go out into Amish country. Sugar Creek, Millersburg, all those areas out there. So small town world, grew up on a cattle farm, and the county's about 80,000 people. I think Dover at that time was around 12,000 people. And that's where I had my first business. I started a lawn care business in my hometown.
Chemical lawn care, or what did you do?
It was application work initially. We started it in 1980. Well, I started it. It was the first year or so, it was just me and a tanker. Remember those 1,000-gallon tankers with those 4 gallons per 1,000 with the mix? Yeah, that's where I come from. And then toward the in about the middle 80s, we added commercial landscape management as well on that. So we were kind of a multi-firm. We had about 1,200 residential clients and about 200 full-service commercial clients. So
very cool. And that's where the Ohio State Alliance comes from. I now have connected the dots.
Born, bred, and educated.
Educated there. That's a good way to put it. I didn't realize you grew up so close to the Hall of Fame because I believe it is next year or the following that my buddy Peyton Manning is going to be inducted. So I will be there for that one.
I have seen a few Hall of Fame games at Fawcett Stadium, and a few interesting games there over time. Yeah, that's kind of a neat thing. We're pretty fortunate there in that part of Ohio to have that facility that close by.
Yes, you are. I would say so. So tell me, we spoke a couple weeks ago about the State of the Union. Has anything changed? Do you think that it's a bullish market if you're a green care owner? And what's the State of the Union from your perspective?
Well, I'm getting a lot of different versions out there right now. I've got many companies are actually experiencing growth, and some of them are having some very aggressive growth. Some are moderate, and some are just kind of holding steady. It kind of depends on the severity of the orders in place in your local area and how it's affecting you. If you're in an area where construction's been shut down and you're doing landscape installation work or things of that nature, you may have been a little more negatively affected. What we're seeing on the lawn care side predominantly is either normal or extended growth programs. I have heard in the last couple meetings with my lawn care peer groups that it's softened and slowed a little bit, but they're still seeing positive growth. So that's a good thing. And I think everybody's now kind of gotten over the, what do we do with the day-to-day operations around COVID? How do we handle masks, the sanitation? That was a pretty complex 3-week period where everybody was trying to get their arms around that. And how do we talk to our clients? How do we talk to our employees and let them know we are essential, we are safe, and we are going to protect you and your property with all the services that we do, plus from any exposure while we're doing the services. So I think that made March and April pretty complicated and very distracting for a lot of teams. I think May, as we enter May and we start to see the orders being lifted, I know everybody in Michigan has to be breathing a big sigh of relief that the governor finally got out of the way up there and let that go. But we're seeing that I think May is going to be a little bit of some continued turmoil because some states are going to loosen up, but some cities in those states are not. Some counties are not. And there's going to be some conflict, and we're already seeing it here in St. Louis and in Missouri as well. The order for Missouri lifts on Monday, the 4th. But Kansas City seems to be going along with the governor. St. Louis, the city of St. Louis is pushing back and saying they're not going to open up at that time. And there's several, cities and county commissioners and things like that are starting to argue back and forth. So we're going to see a mixed bag in May. But I think that it's still seeing good signs out there and positive things, because I think once we get through mid to late May, a lot of that controversy is going to be resolved. We're going to be moving forward. And I think June is going to be the month where we start to see normalcy. Now it's going to be a new normal. It's not going to be the same as it was before. And, with these phased coming out from under these orders, but I think that June will be in the second quarter will be the most normal month that we've seen. And I think the third and fourth quarter, I think everything's going to really start rolling out. We're already seeing increased requests for landscape proposals around the residential markets because people are home. And I don't think this is going to be a big travel year. So people are going to be home and they're going to be doing things around their homes as opposed to taking trips and things of that nature. So I think on that side, and I think, the lawn care and the landscape industry are going to both benefit from a lot of those improvements and things. They're going to be looking to invest around their properties because they're going to be there more so than they've been in the past. Even if they're back to work, they're still not going to be traveling that much, not as much as we have done in the past. So I think we're headed for some good times. But again, May's going to be bumpy because we're going to be kind of going, kind of not, kind of pulling back and forward and things of that nature. But I think we're starting to see some good things, and everything's been pretty stable. There's been, again, pockets here and there where people have struggled, and a lot of orders that were very specific, but also a lot of orders that were very vague in that regard. And how do you interpret it? I know I've read more state and local COVID orders and helped my clients interpret those. It's just been amazing. One thing I know that we've learned is when we think about ourselves as essential, we've started learning how to talk about our businesses, not just in the aesthetics now. I think we have learned to talk about a lot of other things that were always there, the underlying value proposition of what we do to protect properties and protect our customers. I think we've had a kind of a new, kind of a new revelation in terms of all the things that we do, because early on it was, are we essential? And yes, we are. But why are we essential? Well, in the lawn care business, the mosquito work, the flea and tick things, the broadleaf weed control that reduces pollen and things of that nature, and reduces, we see reductions in bee stings, we see reductions in all kinds of things as a result of us improving the turf situations and improving the tree and shrub growth around the properties on that. Not only, and also the air quality and things like that we improve just from having healthy, vigorous plant material around our homes. So, there's a lot of things that we do and have always done, but we tend to focus on the aesthetic in our marketing efforts and things like that over the years. So I think we've relearned how to talk about what does make us essential. And so hopefully that will be a permanent change to our value proposition as we go forward. So I've had some really interesting discussions with owners who are struggling with what makes us essential. And some real interesting epiphanies from people that have been in the business for 15, 20 years, but had always kind of focused on the aesthetics in that regard. So that's kind of cool.
I think there were two words that I learned this spring about our industry that I hope really take flight, and that is essential, that you just discussed. And I have a cocktail glass that may or may not have held champagne on Monday when we got out the door in Michigan. Essential, and then environmental management, and that was coined at the Workforce Summit that we had with NALP in DC in March. And it really is environmental management. And if we take the opportunity, I think we can further entrench ourselves. Just as you said, we've always, well, when I worked at Scott's Miracle-Gro, the phrase on the side of the trucks for 2 years, and it was a great tagline, was, we are making America beautiful one lawn at a time. And beautiful resonated with a lot of people at that point. But
sure.
If you don't think we're essential, you should have been in Michigan last Thursday walking through 12-inch high grass. It just gave it a whole new world.
Oh yeah. And and you can, I've even seen in St. Louis, we never really shut down here, but a couple companies voluntarily shut down. They made that choice, and that was the right choice for them. But you can see properties that have been serviced and have received all their basic treatments and their mowing cycles and things of that nature. And you can see a few properties here and there that were just flat out not done. The contrast is amazing.
We're going to talk about how to conduct a SWOT analysis, but before we dig into that, I like the track you were going down about how we are essential, and now homeowners know that we're essential. From a marketing perspective, today, let's say that we air this on May 1st, do you feel like typically in chemical lawn care, we would be wrapping up marketing efforts? Do you think now, and Michigan aside, because we're really just ramping up there, aside from Michigan, would you recommend that folks still continue to market because we do have the interest and folks are at home?
Yeah, absolutely. And we're talking to people. We're talking to our clients on the lawn care and the landscape side about that. I think in the lawn care world, normally we do our heavy marketing, outreach to clients through a variety of methodologies that we use, direct mail, telemarketing outreach, things of that nature, social media, with inbound marketing, things like that. We typically start to back off on that in late April to mid-May, depending on what part of the country you're in on that. But I think we're going to have, now it won't be like normal, but I think we're going to have a second spring in terms of marketing. And I really am telling people that, you should continue on. I wouldn't, be trying to, full force possibly like you would do earlier, but I would test the waters a little bit, because I think we're going to have a resurgence of people maybe that were sitting on the sidelines, maybe that are thinking about their lawns and landscapes from a different perspective, and they're willing, because they're thinking about it, because they're home, are thinking about, well, maybe I need to make a change, maybe I need to do something differently. So I think marketing efforts should continue in that regard. And again, I would monitor them very closely. And if you weren't seeing the response, very quickly make those adjustments. Don't just toss it out there. I would micromanage it, but I think we're going to see a second spring. And again, I think in the summer, I think we're going to see a lot of improvements. That'll probably hit the landscape side a little more. But again, I think when we start to get into overseeding and soil and pH management and aeration and things like that in the fall, I think, again, there's going to be a resurgence of interest in the total look of my lawn and landscape around. So, yeah, keep on marketing, keep on working your processes. Don't be sidelining your salespeople. But again, monitor it closely, because
And
again,
are there any channels for marketing that you would recommend in particular right now?
well, obviously, most people have backed away from, and I don't think I would continue doing anything in the words of the door-to-door stuff that happens a lot, because that could be viewed negatively. But I think direct mail and a lot of the outreach that happens with the inbound stuff, home advisors and things of that nature, I think those should be opened up and utilized. I think a lot of people start to turn them down or turn off those lead generation sources about now because of costs. But I think I would continue on. I would continue on processing those kind of things. And then, what are you guys? I mean, what are you guys talking about with your folks? You're more engaged on that particular side of things than I am in terms of what's going on in current technology, things of that nature.
One of the things we're hearing from our customers is that direct mail has an unprecedented shelf life right now, because it's gathering on counters. People are actually reading their mail. I don't know if you've noticed it, but the number of telemarketing calls that I typically get in a day have gone from 10 to 1 perhaps. So direct mail, and our customers, homeowners are calling in and saying, I know this had an expiration date of April 30th. Will you still accept it? And of course they are. So we're seeing that trend. On digital, I think it's working, SEO is working. Pedal to the metal on marketing, but change the message somewhat. Don't act like nothing's changed. Talk about how these are our new procedures. Those that just went in the sea of sameness with what they normally had planned didn't do so well without acknowledging the event. And then the other thing that has worked really well, you mentioned door-to-door might not be the best thing to do right now. My good friend Kyle Flanagan at Lawn Aces in Augusta, he's starting a brand new business, but he's done just a nuanced version of door-to-door where he has salespeople in lawn technician uniforms in decaled trucks, and he does what he calls a knock and walk, Fred. So they go up to the door. They've already pre-written the price on there. Here's the handwritten quote. There's no contract. And they put it in a door hanger, but they do a knock and walk. So they put it on the door hanger, knock, walk back to their truck, and it says, What's interesting about it is I'm in the neighborhood taking care of some of your neighbors today. Let me know if I can do anything for you while I'm here. You can text me, and it has that sales guy's cell number. And so it clearly looks like a clover leaf door to door, by a technician. And now you've got someone that they're home, so they go to the door, they take the bag off the door, and they're like, oh yeah, I can catch you while you're actually here taking care of my neighbors. So I don't know which piece of that nuanced door to door is working. Is it because it's a guy in a uniform that looks like he's out treating lawns? He's in a truck that looks like he's treating lawns. It's that he says, text me, I'm here taking care of your neighbors today. So it doesn't look traditional door to door. And I will also say it's in Georgia where, the nail salons are open today. So maybe there's a mind shift that everything is back to normal there. I don't know. But that seems to be working really well for Kyle.
Well, good. And that's an interesting way. Again, we need to change up some of our methodology. You're exactly right with that. And just the same, the messaging, just like we just talked about with what makes us essential, that has to be started to be embedded in some of the new messaging that we're doing. That should be, we should be changing some of the headline pieces on our websites and talking about the essential value added proposition that our services represent to the client, and not just the beautiful weed-free, dandelion-free lawn type thing that it's always worked. But I think some new messaging might be more effective now. And I like that door-to-door idea, because when I was making that comment earlier, I was thinking about traditional methodologies, and that's kind of an interesting take on it. Kind of goes back to when we, 30 years ago, when one of the issues when you sent your techs out was to make sure they had enough estimate forms during the day, and had enough production to do 70% of what their tank load was, so that they could do add-on sales. That kind of disappeared in the late 80s with market maturation, but that was an interesting time. So that could be a return to that kind of methodology, and that's kind of cool. I like that.
Yep, he calls it the knock and walk. So let's dig into.
Okay, that's cool. I'm gonna steal that.
Yeah, do. He'll be happy to do it. And we in fact have samples of exactly how he's had a technician handwrite in, I'm in the neighborhood, so it looks very casual, next door-ish. And that's at realgreen.com/impact. So feel free to repurpose that. He's a very giving guy. So let's talk about SWOT analysis for our viewers today who have never performed a SWOT analysis. I know when I worked at Scott's Miracle-Gro, we would typically do these annually, maybe quarterly. So I'd like to know the cadence in which you would recommend, and then walk us through exactly how our owners should look at their business through the framework of a SWOT analysis.
Okay, all right. So, I was thinking, a few weeks ago, as we were coming out of the, the what do I do now, what do I do next stuff started. We'd been through the PPP plan. Everybody seemed to be in the pipeline on that, and someone had started to get their funds. I was starting to think about my thoughts about what was happening, as these orders lift, as we start to return to whatever our new normal is, and started thinking about how tumultuous May could possibly be. It occurred to me that now would be a really good time for the leadership teams of these of my clients to do a SWOT analysis. Now, a SWOT analysis is it's a brainstorming session, and you're looking at, and SWOT stands for the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And it's an internal and an external. So an internal look, you're looking at the strengths of your organization and the current weaknesses of your organization. What are we good at? What are we not so good at? What are we struggling with internally? And then the external view is, what are the opportunities out there in the marketplace right now, and what are the threats to our business? And so it's a process of walking through that in a brainstorming function and identifying basically a list of those things, a list of strengths, a list of weaknesses internally, externally, a list of opportunities that we think that could benefit us or that are in front of us, and a list of what the threats could be to our business right now. So it's basically a brainstorming exercise. It should include all the senior leaders, account managers, some of your sales representatives, your production managers, branch managers, things of that nature. With that, and in the smaller companies, the owner and a couple of the principal people that he or she tends to lean on that. So I think it's kind of a nice exercise of kind of outlining all these things and then kind of looking at them in a visual way. So that's the first step. The second step in the process is to then circle back after you've completed the initial run through and then do a ranking. Okay, now of the strengths that we have, what's number 1, what's number 10, kind of rank them in order of what their effectiveness is. And the same with the weaknesses, same with opportunities, same with the threats on those kind of things. So it kind of makes you think about your business in a different term right now. And I thought this was just a really super time for everybody to take a breath, sit down and think, and then use the SWOT analysis as the platform for thinking. They're typically done on an annualized basis. They always should be done with strategic planning. They should be done as part of the annual plan. But right now, as we're trying to figure out where are we going, what's next, what do we do, what's out there, what are our problems, what are our opportunities, things of that nature, I thought this was just a classic opportunity to use that tool to reassess where you're at. Because we're going to be looking at rebudgeting. We're going to be looking at adjusting how we do things. We're going to be making some of the changes that we've made permanent. How do we do that? How does this affect our productivity? I mean, all these things. So how does it affect our clients? So I just thought it was a pretty good idea to try it. And I've shared it with all of my, I have kind of 3 tools. I have the actual kind of worksheet to work it on. I've got a document that kind of outlines what it is and how to walk through it. And then I have another tool that says, okay, now that we've done it, what do we do next? What's the next step? Which is then developing action plans from the ranking process of the 4 different quadrants: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So now, and again, several of my clients had done them in the past, but a great many of them hadn't, and several had never even heard of the process at all, because it's generally done in larger organizations as a routine, and it's generally done as a part of a strategic planning process. So it's not something that I see that's particularly common out there, but I think it should be. And I've always advocated for it, and I've always talked about it, but I thought this was a really good time where we're at in the world right now to look at our companies from a different perspective on that and look at it as a team in that process. So I think that now I've had 2 or 3 of my clients that have done them in-house on their own, and I've gotten some pretty positive feedback from them. And I've actually facilitated 3 different organizations who have done them in the past week and a half or so. Like all situations like that, starts out a little awkward, a little slow, but after about 15 or 20 minutes, the juices start flowing, the creativity starts flowing, because the team feeds off of each other. And they generally take about 2 hours to do the first run through, which is, establish the list and then force rank the list by level of importance. And then I say, that's stop, come back, take a break, go out and work for a day or so, then circle back, come back, and then start developing action plans and goals from that top 3 in your ranking with that kind of thing. So, and again, it really is, it's just a tool. It's a process that allows you to just take a fresh look at the current reality right now. And what are those things? What are our strengths? What are our weaknesses? What are the opportunities that we have right now for making our business better, for growing our business, for increasing sales, for keeping our people working? And what are the threats? And the threats are pretty obvious right now, more so than we have dealt with for a while. Usually, sometimes the threats are a little obscure, a little harder full out. Well, they're all around us right now. We're surrounded by threats in that kind of process. So it's just kind of a cool process. And everybody that's actually now done it, taken the time and done it, has come back to me and said, wow, I'm really glad I did it. You know, I've never done one before, or I hadn't done one for a long time. And really, this was a good time to do it. And I got some things, I got some really cool ideas and suggestions from the other people on my team. Some were unexpected and some were unexpectedly good. So, you know, it's here we are in a tough time. Let's get together. Let's brainstorm about where we're at and what we're going to do next. And let's use that SWOT analysis as the vehicle, as the process tool to have that meeting and have that, you know, uncover all that information.
I think, so let's just pretend we're looking at ABC company right now, and you and I have both spoken to dozens of companies the last month. Let's just go through some strengths, weakness, opportunities, and threats. And some, as you pointed out, are unprecedented that we wouldn't think we would be having this conversation in May. And it really is regarding the theme of leveraging the disruption. So instead of this happening to us, this is happening for us. And while you were talking, I wrote down several of these that I've heard from companies. So strengths of, and you were asking them to look at the strengths of their individual organization. I've spoken to companies who already have Zoom leadership calls, or they have a cadence in terms of leadership. You had excellent 12-point outline for the NALP website about how to train your managers. If you've never done that before, what I rolled out yesterday is going to take some time to get some traction, and you're kind of busy right now. But we have several customers, you have clients of yours, that their strength is that was already in place. They've been doing that for years. They had training plans for technicians already in place. They had products that have already been stress tested. And one of the strengths of our industry is we do it outside. For the most part, we're 100% outside. Can you think of any other strengths while we're in that category that you've heard?
Oh, sure. And then some of your strengths are going to be pretty obvious because they're going to come from your, you know, your KPIs. You know, what's our, you know, one of our strengths is we have very high retention numbers. And there's two ways to measure retention. One is your clients, your customers, and the other is your key employees on that. And if you have high retention numbers in one or both, you know, that's a strength. That means we're doing some things right. So some of these can be metrics from your organization too. You know, some of it's a little amorphous, but you know, that would also lean to another strength is that we have a good position in the marketplace, a good reputation. Because if we have a good reputation, it means we're doing quality work, i.e. we're having great retention on those things. That's how you measure those things. So those are strengths. Correspondingly, if your retention is poor, or you've had some slippage right now, or your marketing effort is missing, then maybe a weakness is your reputation in the marketplace, or your, you know, retention, or maybe it's quality or customer communication. You know, so that one set of KPI measurements of retention will tell you strength or weakness, and then it becomes somewhat actionable on those kind of things. How can we build on the strength? How can we address it as a weakness? And what are we going to do to offset that or compensate for that? You know, what do we need to work on? Things like that. So there's the hard stuff, the metrics driven stuff, and then the more amorphous stuff.
Shifting over to weaknesses, I thought about a buddy of mine talked about how he had brand new technicians, and where he's at, they actually did become certified, took their test, but they had planned on a very robust side-by-side supervisor-driven training plan. They don't have anything online. And he said, you know, we are shoulder to shoulder. I'm showing him how to calibrate the spreader. I'm showing him how to identify weeds. I don't have those materials in any other way, because what's worked for us in the past is that we've been shoulder to shoulder in the field with 2 or 3 guys. We'll have field trips every day. And so now the fact that we are deemed essential and we're out there, he said, even though we could do it 6 feet apart, I don't want several of us to emerge on someone's lawn the way we used to. A consumer used to look, oh, look, I've got the whole team here today. Now that doesn't look as good. So a weakness for them was they had no alternative training plans other than infield shoulder to shoulder. What are some other weaknesses you've seen?
Sure. And that's, obviously you have to overcome that. Other ones that we've seen out there are, the fact that we have had someone be tested positive. Okay, now that's an area that we have to deal with. That's internal. We've got some employees that don't want to come to work because of what's going on right now. They don't feel like they're safe on that. So that's something you have to address. That's a weakness right now because our people aren't being there. I had another issue where we had some new hires and people were very excited about the availability of some really good quality workers that had never even looked at our industry before because they were restaurant workers, things of that nature. Guess what? They couldn't get any testing done because the state testing process was shut down. So there were no more tests going on, no online tests, which I don't know why they canceled online testing. I mean, you think that would be something they would push, but they did. So now how are we going to get our certifications? How are we going to get a certified technician for our training process if we can't do that? It's like that. And how are we going to overcome that? That's going to be a weakness in fielding technicians. So these are they're obstacles. They're the problems that we're dealing with right now. I had one customer that basically didn't do a very good job of introducing the internal sanitation processes. Biggest problem that the individual had was he didn't believe them, didn't believe in them, thought the whole thing was kind of a bunch of falderall, and had to go back and regroup because he didn't do a very good job of that. And he had some people say, well, I'm not coming to work because I don't feel safe. And that came right up to the surface and had to be dealt with right now and then. So he had to rewind the tape and start over again. And that was one where I came in and helped facilitate a meeting with those folks. And we basically re-engineered the whole process with that. So, those are weaknesses here and now. Relates to our current reality.
Well, you said something, and the correlation is interesting. A weakness of not being able to get folks certified. In my home state of Indiana, we have an unprecedented opportunity because there's an exclusion for all of 2020 until December 31st, 2020. Anyone can come on board and be a technician and treat lawns alone if you work for someone who is a certified pesticide applicator and you can prove that you've provided 40 hours of training. Unbelievable opportunity for a work pool of candidates that we haven't seen in years, and the opportunity to put people to work right away.
So, so that immediately goes into the opportunity column externally, because now we have access to people, and because of some things have been relaxed, boom, that becomes an external opportunity to bring people in and not have to jump through a couple hoops that we've had to jump through the last few years that complicates being able to get them in the field. Now, that doesn't mean you can. Now, I would also say a threat would be to skip the training entirely and just put them out there. So you can make it an opportunity. You can also say, well, this could possibly be a threat if we don't actually do the proper training internally anyway. Even if we don't have to go through the actual step with the state, we still have to prove that we did it, or it can become a threat in that regard. So a lot of the things as you're brainstorming through this process, oh, here's a strength. Well, yeah, but in certain, maybe that's a weakness as well. There are things that come up through the process of this, of having this type of discussion, putting everybody in the room and having them have this perspective, and when I say in the room, 6 feet apart or either by Zoom, most of the ones I've done have been done over Zoom meetings. And again, we've, with everybody in the room digitally, and face to face. Some of these discussions have been really, really interesting.
In the
Very
opportunity
productive.
department, I thought about my friend Kyle Flanagan and his knock and walk. If you look at door-to-door sales as a channel, so I grew up at Chemlon and we had truck sales, and they were among the highest retaining because a technician was going to measure it correctly because he was the guy that was going to have to treat it. He was
Yeah,
identifying issues that the customer that he may not be able to overcome and set the proper expectations. I loved truck sales. They were highly retaining. It gave our technicians a way to make extra money, but I never liked door to door. When I was at Scott's Lawn Service, Mike Gooch, who's a good friend of mine and a very aggressive, one of the best marketers and sales guys I've ever met, he introduced that to our organization because we wanted to keep up with True Green. And we started door to door and we had success with it. And I know a lot of companies that still do have success with it, but I've never been a huge fan. And when you talk about why it hasn't worked in the past, one of the reasons why is folks aren't home. Well, now you don't have that problem. They're home, they're out on the lawn, they're engaged. And we're hearing from a lot of people that homeowners are excited to see the lawn guy. Like they know he should be coming. They know you're bringing
right.
solutions. Like I ran into a True Green guy in my neighborhood and I took a picture of him. And of course, he's immediately looking at me like I'm the news. And I said, no, 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 I'm just glad you're here. I really appreciate you being here. And he said, I've never had more homeowners thank me before for being out. So that's a huge opportunity that we have
Sure.
that now we're expected and they're excited to see us out on the lawn. And the knock and walk door to door is certainly an opportunity for traditional door to door that we've never seen.
Sure, sure. And I've got some clients that work in some resort areas, uh, the Hamptons on Long Island, Lake Tahoe, Rehoboth Beach, and one of the things that that came up, it's come up in a couple of the SWOT analysis meetings that I've had, because a couple of those have participated, but it's also come up earlier on, and it was the sudden discovery that all of our clients who normally aren't in residence until the summer, they're all home. They're all there because were getting away from their principal residences, which are typically cities, and getting to their vacation home. So all of a sudden in March and April, which never happens, everybody's home. And so it was initially oh no, now what are we going to do? They're home. Well, they were happy to see him. When are you going to do this? What's going on? And a couple other, one time I fielded a call about 3 weeks ago from one of my Long Island clients, and he said they're complaining about the grass not being green. I said, I keep trying to tell them it's March. You never show up till Memorial Day. Everything's green on Memorial Day. So, and he said, what am I going to do? And I said, well, you get to talk to your clients. Usually you don't talk
That's
to these
funny.
clients that much, right? I said, so it's an opportunity because you get to know them. They get to know you. You can explain winter and dormancy, and will color up and what our processes are, and you're going to be able to educate clients that you never had a chance to before. They just saw you do your thing, sent the invoice, as a passive relationship. Now you can take it to the next level. That should help your retention.
And if you look around, I'm in Florida at a vacation home this week, and it's so funny you said that because I didn't think about it. The people on this side are from Pittsburgh. The people on this side are from Chicago. They've never been here in April before. This was they decided to shelter in place somewhere better. And
Yep.
just in yelling across the porch, they're like, oh, I didn't even know who the pest control guy was. He does such a nice job. Or someone showed up yesterday to polish the fenders on the bikes and someone said, I didn't know they did that. You are exactly right. They're here, they're outside, and when they come in the summer, they spend all their time at the beach. And they said, we've never spent this much time on the patio of this home.
Yeah. So my client initially described it as a potential threat, and really, truly what it was is an opportunity to get to know them. And to show them what you're doing at a whole different level than you have before. So again, what could be perceived as a threat maybe is an opportunity if we do it, if we handle it correctly, those kind of things. So that's what a SWOT analysis brings out through the process. It dialogues through and brings all that stuff out to be talked about. And that's why, I mean, some of the things we've talked about are anecdotal that just happened along the way, but some of this stuff, all the SWOT analysis process brings all this out right then and there, and makes you think about it, makes you talk about it, and makes you think about what do we do about it if it's an issue on that.
You know what I
Well,
love about everything we've talked about? When I was at Scott's Miracle Grow, Tim Portland was the CEO of our division, my boss, my friend. I still see him at many events.
oh yeah,
And
I know Tim pretty well.
he's a great guy. And he used to say to me all the time, Beth, facts are a wonderful thing. Facts are a wonderful thing. And if you listen to the news, you can go to bed really uneasy tonight and not even really be able to put your finger on why it is you're uneasy. Same thing with, I just read a report from, I think it was Landscape Management, design build contracts are down 38%. And you can just get a real doom and gloom today without examining the facts for your business and being very diligent and direct about exactly what are my weaknesses, what are my threats. Oh, it's only these, and this is how I can overcome those. And at the
Right.
same time, look at these strengths and opportunities that are unprecedented and how we can go to business. But I like what you've suggested because it really does force you in your own mind to be very direct about what the opportunities are. I listened to a podcast yesterday from a friend of mine, Marsha Barnes, and she talks about in the book Good to Great. I want to find this guy's name. Admiral Stockdale and the Stockdale Paradox. Are you familiar with that?
I read, it's been a while since I read that particular book, so that's not coming to mind right now.
Me too, but go back and revisit this because
I
they
will.
interviewed him. Admiral Stockdale was a Vietnam prisoner of war, and it was a very ugly existence. And the chapter in the book of Good to Great where he says this is confronting your reality is the name of the chapter. And he talks about how in the end you can win and prevail regardless of the difficulties, and at the same time have the discipline to confront the most brutal facts of your reality. And they had asked him who were those most likely to survive in these POW camps, and he said it was the pessimist, which isn't exactly what I would have. I am always optimistic. Fred, you call and tell me how bad your business is. We're going to be drinking champagne at the end of it because I, like my friend Joe Cusick, are very optimistic. But he talked about those who would say, well, we're going to be out of here by Easter. We're going to be out of here by Thanksgiving. We're going to be out of here by Christmas. And those dates would come and go unfulfilled. Those were the folks that were just filled with distraught. But if you examine and confront your reality, which is exactly what you've suggested, and find meaningful ways to address that, those were the ones that survived. So they were always confronting their reality and finding ways to overcome it. And I think this SWOT analysis does a terrific job to provide a framework to do exactly that.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, that book's right behind me on the shelf, and when we get done here, I'm probably gonna pull it up and look at that chapter because I haven't thought about that for a while. But that is exactly right, exactly right. Now there's one other tool that you and I talked about, and
And you
again,
know
it's
what?
not
We're going to
very.
spend, and I'm going to let you introduce it, and we're going to spend time on this next week because I will get cut off on this webinar with someone else that's booked after it. But go ahead and introduce the concept of what we're going to do next.
Okay, so a companion piece to the SWOT analysis, and this is something that you see done more with multinational companies or large organization, and it's called a Pest analysis. And it stands for political, economic, social, and technological. And it follows the same thing. What are these in terms of how they affect us? Are they opportunities or are they threats to our business, and are we prepared to do those? And right now, obviously we're under a situation that is literally nationwide and planet-wide, and it has all of those aspects: political, economic, social, and technological. It's affected all of our businesses and all of us as individuals in every part of that process. And yeah, it's something that you can do as a companion piece and an asset. It's something that you typically in our industry we don't do very often, I think the SWOT analysis is a routine thing, but right now, layering in a pest analysis with your SWOT analysis, right now in this environment, I think is an interesting and could be a really enhancing part of the process
Well,
on
you
that.
you
So,
planted that seed with me when we had a conversation, and I started studying it again. And so I've gone to work with just in normal conversations day to day. I have talked to a dozen companies, and so I've started to build my own. So we're going to have fun with that next week if you've got the time to help us walk through that.
oh yeah, cool. Yeah, and I'm working on it too, the same thing, because when I was doing some workups on gathering data for the SWOT analysis, that popped up, and I hadn't looked at one of those in a long time. I remember doing one, quite a while ago at Brickman, but that was a decade or so.
But the
But
world's changed a little bit since then, but yeah.
yes,
Well,
it
Fred,
has a little bit.
how can our friends, green industry experts and Real Green customers reach you?
They can email me at fred@harvestlandscapeconsulting.com, or they can call me at 619-665-7854.
Wonderful. And we'll have
So
that up on the impact page as well. I really appreciate your time today. I know that facts are a wonderful thing, and the framework you provided for us will allow everyone to go back and do that exercise. Tell your lovely wife I said hello, and we'll schedule time for that pest analysis because I think that's very exciting as well.
yeah, and I think it's a great companion piece. So right now I want everybody to not just sit there and have all this stuff affect you, SWOT back. Do a SWOT analysis for your company.
Back. I love it.
SWOT back and have it and build a plan to get from here to there.
Very good. Stay safe.
All
I'll
right.
talk to you soon. Bye,
Take
Fred.
care. All right. Bye-bye.